Mr. Holligan, the evidence about this way to speak the truth, the whole truth, and none but truth, so you got?
I swear. Good morning, Mr. Holligan.
Good morning, sir.
I'm Selwyn Pieters. I represent the Guyana Prison Service. I have some questions for you. When did you join the Guyana Prison Service?
So I joined the Ghana Prison Service in 2008, the 23rd of June.
In what capacity or what position did you join the Guyana Prison Service?
At that time, I joined the prison service as an assistant prison officer.
And can you tell the panel about your progression or upward trajectory within the Guyana Prison Service?
Upon joining the Ghana Prison Service, after finishing my probationary period, I attended the standard officer course in 2009, March of 2009. Upon being successful, I was promoted to an ensign, returned to the Guyana Prison Service, and upon return, I was commissioned in 2010, February 18th. Afterwards, in later 2010, September period, I attended the junior officers course, number 20. Upon completion of that course, I then attended a course January 2011, force method of instruction. After completing force method of instruction later that year, I attended the junior officers proficiency course, which is a prison course at the Guyana Prison Service. On completion of that course, 2016, I attended the emergency response team training in Maryland, United States of America, and was successful on that course.
Now, you just mentioned that you attended a course in Maryland in the United States of America. What kind of course was that?
Basically, that course, it entails that combatives, right, training, cell extraction, the basic stuff you need to command the prison whenever they have any major situation arising within the prison.
And what is your role currently within the Guyana Prison Service?
I am the task force commander at the Tamir prison.
And so that course would have been relevant to your work as a
Yes, sir.
commander of a task force.
Yes, sir.
Tell the panel what a task force is and what job it does.
Well, the task force basically is the team set aside to assist the custodial ranks in any major incident or disaster that may arise within the prison. The task force would normally assist in whenever they have lockdown, unlocking, feed up ones, there's a need for them. This way they are present in the prison.
And so when you're on duty, you would be always on standby with a team to react to any situations that may occur that requires a tactical team to be ready?
Yes, sir.
And how is it that you came to be at the Georgetown Prison on March 3rd of 2016?
On March 3rd, I was at the Tamir prison when I received a call from my OC, Mr. Diraj Gaindat, who informed that I am to muster the task force ranks and report to the Georgetown prison.
And did you do so?
Yes, sir.
And when you arrived at the Georgetown prison, what took place?
Well, upon arrival, I received an other call that I'm to report to the Prison Officer Sports Club to Mr. Carl Graham, who is the director of prison, and Mr. Kevin Pilgrim, who is the officer in charge of the Georgetown prison.
And did you report to the sports club with your team?
Yes, sir.
And what took place when you reported to the sports club?
We were then briefed about the current situation that is ongoing at the Georgetown prison. We were further instructed that we will be going and conduct a search. We were briefed upon the conduct of the search and the purpose of why we are conducting the search.
Okay, and after that briefing, what took place?
After that briefing, we were then instructed to proceed into the prison yard. Myself and ASP Hudson was in charge of Group A, who was detailed or instructed to search the Capital A division, instruct them to take out the belongings, and evacuate the division in groups of 5.
And I'm not sure if you would you recall the time that you arrived at the Georgetown prison?
I arrived at the Georgetown prison at 9:25.
Well, and what time were you detailed? You mentioned the brief with the director and the superintendent. What time did the team that you were assigned to enter the prison yard?
9:45 hours.
Around 9:45. And how many members comprise your team? Do you recall?
The team that, can you repeat the question? The team that came from Tamir or the team that went in?
No, sorry about that. You mentioned that you were assigned to a search team, and that search team was to go to Capital Block A. You recall you said that a few minutes ago?
Yes.
How many persons, correctional officers or brown clothes or officers, supervisors were assigned to that team?
That team was assigned with 25 to 30 members.
And yourself and Assistant Superintendent Hudson were the co-commanders of that team?
Yes, sir.
And can you describe what roles the officers had on that team?
Well, basically, the officers, there were one group of officers that were stationed on the ground to search the inmates as they come down 5 at a time, search them and also their belongings. And there was also a group set aside to extract the alleged ringleaders that would have been aiding in causing the problem the night before.
And that team that would have been the extraction team, that team would have had its own commander?
Yes, that team had its own commander.
And who was the commander of that team?
The commander of that team was Chief Prison Officer Patrick Crawford.
And was Mr. Crawford reporting to yourself and Mr. Hudson, or was he reporting higher up the line?
He was reporting higher up.
Very well. And in terms of your team that was stationed on the catwalk at Capital Block A, how many members comprise that team?
The team at the Capital Block A, team of the Capital Block A, basically I cannot recall the amount of persons that went directly to the Capital Block A.
Very well, but you recall, what role did you have when you went to Capital Block A, that door?
My role was basically to have the inmates gather their stuff, approach the entrance in an orderly fashion, and to evacuate the building 5 at a time.
And in terms of keeping a record, was there anyone on your team at the door keeping a record of the conduct of the evacuation of the Capital Block A unit?
Yes, sir.
And who was that person?
Prison Officer Liking, R. Liking.
Very well. And did you have any officer in civilian clothes as well on the landing? Do you recall?
To my recollection, there was one prison officer within CV clothing, who was Owen Charles.
Very well. Do you recall any other correctional officers there in civilian clothes?
No, sir.
Very well. Tell the panel how the evacuation of Capital Block A unfolded.
Upon reaching the Capital A division, Mr. Hudson first informed the inmates to gather their belongings and approach the door in an orderly fashion. They will be leaving the building in groups of 5. Upon trying to open the entrance at the first instant, the key was not opening, and to to our recollection, is as if the door was jammed from inside.
And when you say the door jammed inside, can you explain to the panel what you mean by that and what may have jammed the door from inside?
It was as if the prisoners took it's either pieces of wood or any material that they could find to stick the door so that it would not get any play for the keys to operate it properly for it to open.
And do you have experience with inmates jamming the door from inside so that the chop key wouldn't work?
Yes, sir.
Very well. Were you successful in, well, let me ask you, how did that situation resolve itself?
After we did not get through the first time, we then sent for Mr. Michael Kosher, who is the mechanic at the Georgetown Prison, to come and assist with opening door with a metal cutter. Upon us going back to the door, they had an inmate, a remanded inmate, Randy Mars, shout out to me saying, "Mr. Holligan, you could open the door." Right there and then, Mr. Owen Charles went back to the door, tried the key, and it was opened.
And to your mind, what does that tell you?
That the prisoners had removed the metal or hard material that they had placed before to jam the door.
Very well. And what happened when the door was open?
When the door was open, myself and Mr. Hudson then repeated ourselves, saying, "Just gather your belongings and come to the door in an orderly fashion," and also explain to them they would be leaving 5 at a time.
And did you tell them where they were going to be going to?
No.
Okay, so what happened next?
As they exited the building 5 at a time, there were officers there directing them to the search area where a group of officers would be searching them, and afterwards they will be then escorted to the recreational bay.
Okay, and how did that search progress?
At first it was going smooth. After the extraction team identified one of the ringleaders and tried to separate him after he was being searched. There was an inmate, remanded inmate, Shaq McKenzie. After he saw that, he started cursing and started to go on in an uncontrollable manner. He came outside to the mesh. He started cursing. Then he stepped back in front of my face and started to curse at me, and went on in a manner such as if he wanted to hit me or something. So I told him to step back. He did not comply. So I then pushed him back into the dormitory and secured the door by holding it for him. After which, he still went on cursing and going on in an uncontrollable manner, but other inmates, he went back into the dormitory, and other inmates came forward to come out of the division. While the other inmates were coming out of the division, I noticed I noticed that the inmates started to go on uncontrollably again. I cannot recall what made him go on that way once again, but he started going on and started arming himself with improvised weapons. And while he was arming himself with improvised weapons, I heard Mr. Houghton say, weapon. So while Mr. Houghton said weapon, when I turned my attention to them, they were rushing the door, so I then pushed the door inwards. And at that point in time, Mr. Hudson gave me the instruction to lock the door. While pushing the door, they started to push back the door, and there were some small holes on the door, big enough for their makeshift spears which they made from broken bedposts. They started pushing that through the door. prison officer like him then come and assist me in trying to lock the door. He locked the door while he himself tried to hold on one of the metal spears that the improvised makeshift spears, which he got from Bedford. They were pushing it through the door. He hold on to one and got the door to master and lock. After which we stepped back and the prisoners started to coerce us, telling us they would shoot us on the road, they would shoot our families, started to throw urine and other chemicals laced with pepper at us.
Did you get hit at all by any of the substances that were thrown out of the living unit?
Yes, sir. I was hit with urine.
And when you were hit, where did the urine hit you?
Some got on the side of my face and on my jacket, my uniform.
Did you continue to wear that uniform?
No, when we retreat from the Capital A Division, I then went to the yard to change all the jacket and put on a jersey, a prison jersey.
And what color was the jersey that you wore?
A green jersey, sir.
Very well. So you had on what pants did you have on at that point?
I kept on my uniform pants and wore the jersey.
Very well. Did you go back to the landing at Capital Block A?
I did not go back after changing my jersey. I to Capital A. I then went to Capital B.
Very well. And what did you observe while you were at Capital Block B?
Well, upon approaching Capital Block B, we were met with the same aggression. It was as if the prisoners from Capital B tried to pick up for the prisoners in Capital A. They met us with the same aggression, chorusing, and they even threw stones at us, stones which we got from the broken wall.
Now, who were you with when you went to Capital Block B?
It was myself and several other officers.
Do you recall who some of those officers were?
I can recall myself, Mr. Hudson, and Mr. Crawford.
Very well. Was there any superintendents or any officers of any higher rank there with you as well, as far as you recall?
As far as I can recall, there was Mr. Samuels was there present in the yard when Capital B started to reach out of control, and also Superintendent Kevin Pilgrim.
Now, prior to that, when you attended the briefing, did you see Senior Superintendent Samuels there?
No, sir.
Okay. And the time that you saw him in the yard, was that the first time you saw him within the Georgetown Prison on that day?
Yes, sir.
Very well. And tell us what you saw Senior Superintendent Samuels did while he was at that prison.
Well, upon the inmates starting to reach out to control, Mr. Samuels tried to talk to them, to have them to evacuate the division. After a period of him talking, they finally got to calm down, and that's when they started to come out of the division.
Very well. And what was your role at the point in time the inmates from Capital Block B were evacuating that unit?
I was up on the landing, directing them down the stairs. Stairway.
And how did that evacuation unfolded or progress?
Well, after they evacuated the division, we noticed that smoke was coming from in the center of the division. Upon going and investigate, there was a fire formed by the hole that was created in the wall that separated Capital A from Capital B division.
And what did you do at that point?
At that point, while in the division, Mr. Summers came in the division as well, and he was shouting, "I'll get fire extinguishers, get fire extinguishers." Like a couple seconds after, Mr. Patrick Crawford came up with the fire extinguishers, and they put out the fire.
Okay, after that fire was extinguished, what happened next?
After that fire was extinguished, Mr. Summers then went out of the division, and we went around to Capital A Division. Mr. Summers was also explained to them, they let them, explain to them that they need to evacuate the division in an orderly manner. But upon checking, the door was locked.
Well, let me ask you this before you continue. You said the door was locked,
Yes.
and you had earlier testified that after the inmates rushed the door,
Mhm.
you pushed the door in and Lycan turned the key and locked the door.
Yes.
Between the point at which Lycan locked the door and you just spoke of, was that door ever reopened?
I won't be able to say because I went out the prison yard to change off my top. So I can't say if they tried to open it back or they left it locked.
No, but from your observations, what you observed, was the door open between those 2 points at any time while you were within sight of that door?
No.
All right, so you were at a point where someone said the door couldn't open?
Yes.
And what took place at that point?
At that point, myself and several other officers, including Mr. Crawford, tried to raise the door with our feet so that they can try the keys. But when they were trying the keys, they were not getting through in opening the door.
And at any point, you mentioned that in the first instance, when there was the issue with the door, an inmate whose name was Randy Mars spoke with you and resolved that issue. You recall that evidence?
Yes, sir.
At that point in time, was there any sort of dialogue with the inmates to remove whatever obstruction would have been between the door internally so that the door can reopen?
At which time when we were attempting
This
to...
second instance.
Yes, we were shouting to them, asking them to remove whatever they had chucked that jammed the door. But upon doing that, we found that we were not getting any response.
All right. When did you first notice fire within Capital Block A?
When we went around to Capital Block A, when they said to open the door, we saw smoke coming through the vents of the door.
And what actions did you take?
At that point in time, that's when we tried to open the door, but upon trying, it was not successful in getting it open.
And what happened next?
Afterwards, we tried to see if we can get fire extinguishers. After went for fire extinguishers to see if we could aid in outing the fire. As well, fire service came and they were trying to out the fire as well. And Mr. Michael Kosher and Mr. Michael Kosher went up with the metal cutter, tried cutting open the door, but it was not successful. Then him and Mr. Lykin tried and tried. Eventually, they got the door open.
All right, so I'm gonna step back and ask you some questions in between those times.
Okay, sir.
At any point did you heard or observed officers giving the inmates an alternate escape route?
Yes, sir.
And what would that have been?
Through the hole that was created in the wall that separated Capital A to Capital B Division.
Right, and what would you have heard or observed?
I heard officers and inmates shouting to them, come through the hole, and well, upon checking to see if persons are coming out, at that point I did not see anyone come out from through the hole through the Capital B Division door.
And did you heard any person telling them to come through the door at Capital Block B?
Can you please repeat the question, sir?
Did you heard anyone shouting to the inmates to come through the door?
Basically, it was inmates and officers. I didn't really hear no one in particular, but just inmates and officers shouting, you could come through the hole that was created.
And tell us what the atmosphere was at the time in which this was taking place.
It was confusing. The place was filled with smoke. The fire was raging out of control, and officers was running back and forth trying to get water from the reservoir at the back to see if they could assist in out in the fire. The firefighters were there trying, as well as Mr. Crawford was running with a fire hose to see if he could aid as well. Basically, it was kind of confusing because everything just went haywire from then on.
And how did your training prepare you for such an experience?
Well, basically from my training, I was taught that if a situation like that arises, we try to sustain the situation by seeing the best way out, and the best way out was just to see if we get fire, because we were not getting through, so we tried to use the fire hose, try to get fire extinguishers to see if we can out the fire.
Now, have you ever worked at the Camp Street jail before?
Yes, sir.
And have you ever worked at the New Capital Division?
No, sir.
Would you have known at the point in time that you went up to do the search how many doors were there?
No, sir.
Very well.
A moment's indulgence, Your Honor.
Did you, what effect did this, or impact did this event have on you?
Well, afterwards, it kind of left me traumatized, because I can recall when me and Mr. Crawford was trying to assist the officer who was trying to open the door by bracing her foot. I could recall I heard inmates screaming as if, it's like he was just lying there in the fire. After, even though I tried to assist in getting the door open, trying to get the inmates out, inmates basically send threats at me. It's as if I was the fault that they lit the fire and got burnt. They even throw feces and urine at me. And at that point in time, is as if, you were like it was like the situation was so serious, like I couldn't even come to grips that it had actually happened, because like it went from a controlled environment to an uncontrollable environment. To date, I can still, when I'm sitting in my quiet moments, it's like thinking back on that day. You could still hear these prisoners screaming. You could still hear the threats prisoners sending at you, the cursing at you. It was like as if you did your job to the best, but you didn't do it good enough to assist on that day. And to be fair, it's like I seeing that situation. I mean, I'm in the service for 8 years. It's kind of hard to cope with what went on that day, and wondering if something like this should happen, how will I be able to cope with it? Because it's like you're in fear that if this thing goes to this level again, how can you assist somebody? How could you preserve a life that is already lost?
Well, with your training that you did in Maryland, would that assist you now in terms of managing such a situation?
Yes, it would assist me, and that came in as that came in as a plus after going through that trauma, because I'm a little more equipped in dealing with serious situations that would arise in the prison.
And let me ask you this, were you able to avail yourself of any psychological or social work counseling to help you with what you just described to the panel?
No, sir.
Did anyone make those facilities or professional services available to you?
No, sir.
All right, talk to me afterwards. Those are all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Holligan, good morning again.
Good morning.
You good?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You said when you came from Temeri, you were briefed about the present situation at the Georgetown Prison. If it is possible, could you give us some details about that brief?
The briefing was basically about the fire that happened the night before. The manner in which we will be conducting search is to aid in checking to see if the building, if there is any damaged parts of the building, if there is anything that we need to fix and those stuff. The briefing was basically that the fire occurred. We will be conducting search so that we can see if the building was damaged in any part.
Thank you. And you stated that at the time of the search, the alleged ringleaders were extracted. Can you tell us how you knew who were the leaders?
I did not know who was the leaders, but the task force commander would know who was the leader. I did not know.
Task force commander, and that person is?
Patrick Crawford.
Mr. Crawford. And you said you weren't getting the front door open when there was the fire at Capital A. Did anyone inform you? I know you said you didn't know, but did anyone inform you that there was another door?
No. I said I wasn't getting the door open.
The front door. That's the Capital A door. When they had the fire.
No one informed me.
No one informed you.
Another door.
Who else was there at that door with you?
While I was trying to get it open.
Yes, please.
At that present moment, it was myself, Mr. Crawford, and another prison officer by the name of Douglas.
Douglas. And the Capital B division door now, when the fire was going on in A, do you know if that door was open when the inmates got the command to come through the hole?
Which door? Capital B?
Yes.
Yes.
It was open?
Yes.
How do you know?
At that point in time, when the fire was going on out of control, I can recall Mr. Crawford went up and opened the door to aid, just in case they did not get to come through that door, they can come through the hole that was created.
Okay, sir. When the command came to the inmates to exit, that they can exit through the hole and come through B, did you hear the inmates respond?
No, I didn't hear any response.
No response. You said that the entire situation went from a controlled environment to an uncontrolled environment. In your own estimation, what was the time span between it's very controlled to out of control?
I would approximate it was within a 20 minutes span.
About 20 minutes. Now, from the time the fire in Capital B began, that's when you were extracting the inmates from B. You saw the fire at the hole.
Yes.
From that moment to when the fire service came, in your opinion, what's the estimated time?
In my opinion, with the fire in capital B, with the fire in capital B, the fire service was not called at that time.
How do you know that?
Cause with that fire, we were the only person on the ground would know about that fire.
Yeah.
Cause we saw smoke coming. That's when we went to investigate, and that's when we saw the fire. Cause that was at the center of the division.
Okay, so at the time when there was that fire, who was there when you saw that smoke?
Was myself, Mr. Samuels, Mr. Crawford, and several other officers
And you said the fire service was not called at that time.
at that time.
What would lead you to believe that?
Based on my judgment at that time, I was there. I don't think they had knowledge of that fire because it was in the center, and only we that were at the door could have noticed that they were fighting.
Okay, so at the time when you went in now, you realized it is a fire, capital B.
Mhm.
From that time to when the fire service came, can you give me an approximation of the time between that fire in capital B and when the fire service came?
Let's say 10 minutes.
About 10 minutes. So by the time the fire service came, what was the state of the inmates, voices, surroundings that were in capital E?
By the time the fire service came,
Yes, please.
we were not getting no response from them.
The place was quiet. Was it rowdy?
Was
it
quiet.
Very quiet?
Yeah, it was just a fire hurling out of control.
Okay. And at the time when the fire service came, did you notice any inmates loose at that time or came out of their cells?
At the time when the fire service came, upon the fire service arrival, the door was not open as yet.
The door was not open?
No.
Can you tell us when they came, what you observed?
When they came, what I observed.
Yes, when the fire service came, what did you observe?
Could you be a little more specific? Observe with
Okay.
the fire service or with
The fire service.
Um,
What you observed them do?
they were some of the firemen were at the side of the division,
At the side.
the landing, trying to get the grill to open
Which side is that?
um,
South, north, east, west?
I think the northern side.
So they weren't at the front door?
One fireman was at the front door with the hose,
Yes.
and another one was on the northern side trying to out the fire.
So there were two firemen with two hoses?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes, ma'am. There were two firemen. One had a hose at the front, and the other one had a hose along with some other fire ranks trying to get because they had to lose the expanded metal so that the hose could come through so it could properly give water to the division.
Was water coming up at that time?
Yes.
Okay.
Upon the getting the expanded metal open, they had to lose some of the pressure. They did not turn it out, lose some of the pressure so the hose could flex a little to come through, and then they turn on the pressure.
Okay, so the water came through first, then they stopped it.
No, they did not stop it.
I don't know.
With the pressure, they lower the pressure a little so the hose could flex
Yes.
to come through the mesh. They did not turn it off completely.
Okay, okay. And after they started their firefighting efforts, at what time? And you said you were trying to open the door using the...
Metal cutter.
At what point did you notice inmates, or if you notice at all, any inmates coming through from Old Capitol? You noticed that?
No, I didn't notice.
No inmates. When you got the door open, what happened after then?
When the door was open and the firefighters were still there trying to out the remaining fire, that was when the old Capitol Division broke the wall closer to the step.
Of course. When the door got open, did any firefighter enter into the door?
When the door opened, I saw one firefighter
Where?
go in. He went in.
Went into
Yes,
the
but they.
division? So there were two firefighters.
Mhm.
Both of them were still there when you got the door open?
Yes.
And one went into the division?
One came from downstairs and go into the division.
One came from downstairs with water? With
No, that person went in to see if anybody was still alive or
So the fire was extinguished by them?
it was controlled by them.
So that somebody could have gone in?
Yes.
So the firefighter who went in did not go in with any water or any hose. He just went to see if.
Yeah,
persons
whilst
were
the other two firefighters was still sending the water
They were still sending water from where?
from the front and the side.
Okay. Continue. Tell me about the breakage.
They then broke the sidewall that is close to the new Capital Division stairway.
Inmates you're talking about?
Yeah, inmates. They then broke the wall and came onto the stairway, and they started coursing going on, and a few of them went in along with the rest of firefighters.
And what you observed them doing? The inmates?
They were just coursing. Some of them aid the remainder inmates who were alive to come out of the division, while the rest was still on the stairway coursing.
Were you afraid?
At that point in time, no,
Why?
because being in the job for some time, I saw a lot of incidents, but not any of this grave state, and that somewhat aid me in holding my posture and keeping level head at that point in time.
Apart from yourself, any other prison officer was there at that time?
But could you specify where exactly? In the
When
yard?
No, right on that landing.
They had a lot of prison officers there.
That is after the doors open, after Old Capitol.
No.
building, any-
They had prison officers there while the door was trying to be open. Like King was aiding Miss Kosher, Mr. Crawford was inside with some other prison officers trying to get the
And
hose.
when the door was open,
Yes,
you said you were there.
yes.
Any other prison officer was there with you when the door was open and the other inmates came across from Capitol, Old Capitol?
Yes.
Any other officer was there with you?
Yes.
Prison officer?
Yes.
Who?
Was still Mr. Likin, Mr. Kosher, Mr. Crawford was down the side,
Okay.
and some other officers, I can't recall their names.
Okay, were on that landing.
Yes.
Okay, sir. Did you go in?
Yes, I went in.
And what did you observe?
I observed they were burnt bodies at the side of the door, and they had two bodies down at the ablution area.
What's the abolition area?
The toilet area.
So we had bodies.
Just a minute. What you call it? Ablution area? What
Ablution.
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 So we had bodies at the door, you said?
Yes.
And bodies at the toilet area?
Yes.
Anything notable about those bodies? Anything you noticed?
Some of them were burnt, and some of them looked like they just suffocated from the smoke.
Okay. The injured inmates, you said that some of the inmates helped to bring out some other inmates.
Yes.
Did you see where they were?
No.
No. At the time when you went in,
They were already out.
already out.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to take you away a bit from the scene. Do you know of any inmate who came over from Capital A through the hole of Capital B and escaped that fire?
I can recall I heard, that's after, I heard someone came over, but at that point in time, I didn't know of
You
any.
didn't know of anyone? Okay. Thank you, Officer Holligan. Chair, I have no more questions.
So Holligan, good morning.
Yes, sir.
Quick one. When you went to Capital B, you indicated your prisoners behaving very aggressive.
Yes, sir.
Did you see anyone from the capital A, the capital B division at that point in time?
At that point in time, I could not have seen anyone. I saw the inmates, but I could not have make out if any one of them was from capital A division.
Okay, thank you. How many times Scotia went to that door using the steel cutter?
2 times he went with the steel cutter. The first time he didn't have to use it because Randy Marr shut out to me and said, you can open the door. And the last time was when he tried to cut it open, and he did use the metal cutter, but it was not successful in getting it open.
Thank you. No further questions.
Officer Holligan.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I know you've served 8 years in the service. You said you've had 8 years of service
Yes,
in the
yes,
Ghana
ma'am.
prison service. Could you tell us how, if you've ever served at Camp Street Prison? I know you're at Tamari at the moment.
Yes, I have served at Camp Street Prison.
And for what period of time?
I served. I had a tenure when I just joined the work.
Okay.
When I came off from the cadet officer course, I served another tenure in 2011. Yes, and after I did a stint at Georgetown Prison, then I went back in 2013.
So 2011, 2013.
Yes.
And during that period, was this sort of new method to some of us, you know, of inmates here in Ghana throwing urine at prison officers. It's a somewhat newish method for some of us. What, during that period of 2011, 2013, were inmates throwing urine at prison officers?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, they'd begun to do so at that period. Can you recall? Well, you wouldn't be able to answer that because you weren't there before. But maybe in conversations with other inmates, with other prison officers at Camp Street, would you be able to say when this new method of attacks on prison officers started here in Guyana?
No, ma'am, can't say.
Okay. And the throwing of feces as well. When did that start? Because that's also new.
I won't be able to say when that started, but I can say that I know of instances that it did happen.
In Camp Street Prison
In
as
Camp
well?
Street Prison as well.
Prior to the day in question that you were there?
Yes, ma'am.
Because you're stating that feces was also thrown
Yes.
on the day of the 3rd?
Yes.
And tell me, how does a materialish object, you know, like feces, can it find itself through the metal wiring of capital A and B?
Well,
does
the feces, it was in liquid form. It was like liquefied.
Wow.
Because as they threw it and it came on you, you could smell and you could see that it's feces.
So our inmates are learning new techniques as well, eh?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think they are, given the use of, seeing TV in their dormitories, etc., and TV programs that are, in a sense, that are piped into our homes, uncensored as well, quote unquote, not even paid for, you know, freely given to us here, because as you know, in other country situations, you have to pay for a number of programs. I think only some of the news services are given, you know, free of cost. I understand even in Barbados, the average Barbadian citizen does not have access to all, for example, the free movies that we see, which are becoming even more violent, right? And free other documentaries, etc. Do you think in any way the showing of some of these, or let me back up, I should ask whether the average inmate has access to all these showings in their dormitories?
I won't be able to say.
You can't say that.
No, I can't say.
Timeri has also access to TV programs?
It has access to TV, but to say if the programs show on the selected channels that normally show at Timeri, I can't be able to say.
Do you know whether they see, for example, all the CNN news?
I know they see news.
You see news?
Local, but CNN, I can't say.
Because you are, like, no doubt all of us in Guyana, of the heightened news that we've all been seeing for the last 2, 3 years of what's happening, particularly in the USA, with respect to riots on the street, riots in institutions, you know, all the heightened violence of citizens and police and citizens, innocent folks caught in the crossfire, etc. But they've been also seeing some of these news footage. Would you be able to say?
No, I can't say.
Because you see, we're trying to, you know, place all of this in a context as well. You have heightened news releases of violence. You have an El Nino situation as well too, a heightened El Nino situation. Fire is almost fire and more fire and more fire. So thank you for that useful information about the way fisheries is now being used by our inmates here. With respect to your training in Maryland, because you are the task force commander as well too?
Yes.
Yes. So no doubt as a result of your status, you were able to go on this training, and it's quite recent in 2016.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this the only one you were able to attend in Maryland?
Yes, ma'am.
It's the only one. And that took place as recently as February.
March.
March?
Yes.
Oh, it's not February the 14th to the 23rd of 2016?
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay, well, so we'll make a little correction there. So it's as recent as March?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And this is March what date?
March the 14th.
March the 14th.
To the 23rd.
To the 23rd. Oh, okay, so it was post
Yes.
the incident. All right. Because if it was prior to the incident, my line of question would have been, to what extent is there an assessment by the Guyana Prison Service itself as to not only the overall general, application of some of the methods transported from there to here, not only the general methods, but some of the specific methods that ought to be assessed culturally also here to Guyana. You know, because we've seen the movement over the last 10 years, given the whole globalized trend of not just consumerism, but also the marketing and consumerism of violence as well, to how to meet with violence, you know. So sometimes it's useful for us at ground level to assess how much of this we should be taking on board, given our own situation here in Guyana, culturally, physically, etc. So some of these trainings, in a sense, ought to be key components that need to be taken into consideration. Must deal with your on-the-ground situation of overcrowding and lack of staff. Because no doubt the Maryland Police and Correctional Training Department, I would want to think or suspect that they don't have those grave issues that you have. Right? You see where I'm coming from?
Yes, ma'am.
So that is just a word of caution to us all because we're now living in this globalized situation in which we feel everything from the Western world has to be imbued and taken on board, overnight. And it's not always satisfactory, it's not always helpful for us. Not everything that is parachuted in is helpful. The best solution and resolution of conflicts ought to lie from the local situation, at ground level, from the expertise and the experience of local personalities, leadership, skills, and knowledge. Would you, sir, agree with that? Even though it's sort of outside of the parameter of the primary aim of this commission, but there is a secondary aim where we have to look and assess and see how better changes can take place in order that your life is more secure as well as inmates.
Yes, ma'am.
So you would appreciate.
I got the impression when you were referring to the door, you couldn't get it open, that you felt that the inmates rendered that door inoperable, so you couldn't open it. It couldn't be opened. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Counsel for the commission asked you these words: are you afraid? And your answer was, at that point, no. Was there any point at which you were afraid?
Afterwards, sir.
When and why?
Because I was afraid after the incident got contained and inmates was throwing their threats that they will take my life, they take my spouse's life, they know where I live, they know where my mother lives, they will burn down my house because they know exactly where I live. Those types of stuff. That's when I got afraid.
And you felt they were able to execute those threats?
Given the fact that some of the threats were coming from the convicted as well, persons that were doing short sentence, and one person even shouted out exactly where I lived.
The fact that they knew where you lived, you felt so. You have no proof that they did in fact know where you live, but
No.
let's assume
Yes, sir.
that they know that. That was enough to scare you, you say.
Yes.
Do you scare easily?
No, sir.
So I don't understand why inmates in there telling you that should inject scare. Anyhow, that's how you felt.
Yes, sir.
You still feel so now?
Not for me, but for my family.
Where they get with, you feel they will get at you through getting at your family?
Yes.
Okay. That's all. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
You're discharged.
Yes, sir.
You may leave. Next witness, please. Probably freeness. Freeness.
Good morning, Mr. Crawford.
One second.
I'm Selwyn Pieters. I represent the Guyana Prison Service. I have some questions for you. How long have you been with the Guyana Prison Service?
About 12 years now, sir.
And what is your rank?
Chief Prison Officer.
Very well. And in terms of being a Chief Prison Officer, at which location are you stationed?
Presently at Camp Street Prison, sir.
And what is your role?
Duty officer.
And what does that mean?
The person who is in charge of the daily activity of the prison, as related to the inmates, checking of the tally, the inmates' recreation, as related to persons who would like to wish to see the nurse or the medical officer. They have complaints and such like.
Are you, in other words, are you in the position of a duty manager? That's what I want to know. Are you in charge of the shift
Correct,
that would
sir.
be on duty when you're working?
Yes, sir.
And to whom you would report when you're on duty?
To the officer in charge.
Very well. And your role would be on the operational side.
Yes, sir.
And what sort of training do you have?
I train in a lot of areas. I did unarmed combat, for drills, emergency response. I also train in mock prison riots and such like.
Very well. And do you mentor or train other officers?
Correct, sir.
Can you elaborate on that for the panel?
I've been placed in a position as the recruit training officers at the recruit level. Officers who are actually in the service also, to some extent, I do training for drills, self-defense, prison duties, such like.
How long have you been at the Camp Street Prison?
I used to work at Camp Street. I was transferred to Mazuni Prison, but I recently got back there like about a year ago.
Very well. So you've been there for a year?
Yeah, my return there about a year ago.
Very well. And in terms of your interaction in the prison, have you had cause to visit Capital Block A and Capital Block B in the normal course of your duties?
Several times, sir.
Before you answer further, look this way, answer. Listen that way to hear.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I should have let him know. Tell the panel about your experience in dealing with inmates from Capital Block A, and what would take you to that living unit during the course of your duties.
In my experience during my tour of duty from time to time with the Capital Block A division, I money also actually start taking the inmates from that division to play basketball during the course of the evening when the prison would lock down, and we would play basketball like to 7:30 in the evening. I want the officers to actually bring them out for the day, football during the course of the day. And any concern that they will have, I try to address it to the best of my ability. That's my interaction with Capital A, Block A division.
And why would you be taking them out for football and basketball?
I see it as a way I can get them to ease some of the tension being in prison as an inmate, because some of them are in there for quite some time. So I see it as a way that they can actually relax and tend to pass time, so to speak, in a more proper way, as opposite to being indulgent in illegal activities.
When you would take them out for basketball or football, would other prison officers, especially the younger ones, would they participate as well?
Yes, they would to some extent. Yeah, they would.
And what would be the relationship or the interaction between the officers and the inmates?
I find that it have a better relationship with the officers and the inmates, because they tend to open to you, to let you know what worries them. Sometimes you can assist them. Some of them Some inmates do not want to speak out, but during the course of sports, you actually get them to say what's actually going on with them in the quiet times. If you are probably on the same team with them, they're more related to you that way.
Very well, and you found that beneficial to you in your work.
Yes, sir.
And how did you address concerns that the inmates may have brought to your attention?
The concern that I can deal with directly, I dealt with them, and the ones that are out of my control, I related directly to the officer in charge, or some other senior rank that will assist me with doing the same.
And in terms of that capital block A, did you have cause prior to March 2nd to deal with issues of contraband?
Yes, sir.
And what would be the nature of the contraband that you would deal with or have dealt with in the course of your duties there?
From time to time, we carry out internal searches, joint service searches, and we'll unearth contrabands, drugs, cell phones, improvised weapons, fermented wines, cell phone chargers, accessories.
And would you as a supervisor be supervising some of those searches?
Yeah, my rank entails me that I am, from time to time, the prison is a very large prison, and we designated as in groups to be responsible for a particular division. If there's a joint service search or internal search, you will be in charge of a division.
And what would happen to an inmate if you find contraband on that inmate's person?
The inmate, the officer who found the contraband on the inmate, he will submit a statement. The inmate will be adjudicated or severely reprimanded. If it's narcotics, they will learn the matter. They have to submit a statement, and they call in the police officer, and they deal with that. If it's related to a cell phone or improvised weapon, it's done deal with departmentally.
And some officers have testified, at least one officer at least testified that there are corrupt officers within the prison. Have you had cause to deal with any officer who would have been found with either an illegal weapon or narcotics or any other prohibited item?
No, I've never dealt with that directly, sir.
Very well. And in terms of your inspection, would you, during the course of your duty, make it your task to go to the living units to conduct inspections of the living units?
Of the inmates or the officers?
Yes, the inmates' living units.
Yes, that my duties entails that also.
And when you inspect the living units, if there's a concern in respect to, for example, a broken bed, would you deal with that?
Very well, I will, sir. If there's a broken bed, the inmates are not keeping it to a certain standard as relates to sanitation, we'll try to get some detergents. We have a designated person who are actually responsible for that, and we'll try to assist them with the necessary aids to get it sorted out and urge them to keep it healthy for their own safety and health.
And in terms of if an inmate or the orderly approach you, and I'm not sure the term used in Guyana, but if I'm going to use our term, if an inmate approaches you or the orderly approaches you concerning incompatibles, inmates who weren't getting along, or an inmate who is required to remove himself from the living unit or be harmed, what would you do?
An investigation will be done to get the inmate that make the allegation against the other inmate, and the investigation will carry out, and if there's necessary need to remove the inmate from that location to another location, we will deal with it immediately because of the safe custody of the inmates.
But you conduct the investigation first, or you remove the inmate first and then investigate after?
Immediately, as the nature of the situation, we will deal with it immediately and then do the transport. You don't allow the inmate to go back into the division. You let them be orderly, pack up his stuff and bring it to the office, and then we get the inmate transport to the next location.
Very well. And in terms of Capital Block A, you would know that that division holds a particular species of inmates. Can you describe, or class of inmates? Can you describe the classification of those inmates?
Yeah, the Capital Block A division, they house persons of high profile and persons with crimes of murder and some nature of robberies also.
And in your experience at that jail, have you had cause to investigate or deal with gang issues?
Yes, sir.
And were there gangs that were affiliated to the street, or were these gangs that were formed internal to the prison?
You can say both. Mostly the persons, the Guyana is a very small country, and persons who, the persons who do crime-related stuff, they actually, when they do apprehend and come into prison, they might know a friend or know another crime mate or whatever.